At 10:01 on March 21st. I'd like to start with a brief land acknowledgement. The Public Safety Civil Service Commission acknowledges that we are on the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish and Duwamish people and their descendants. We honor with gratitude the land and the people, past and present. So the next item on our agenda is introductions. I guess I'll start with me. My name is Richard Green. I'm the chair of this Public Safety Civil Service Commission. So maybe we could start this way.
Ann Bold with the City Attorney's Office, counsel to the Commission.
Joe Levan, also with the City Attorney's Office and also counsel for the Commission.
I am Andrea Sheely. I am the Executive Director for the Public Safety Civil Service Commission.
I'm Teresa Jacobs, the Executive Assistant for the Civil Service Commissions.
Hi, I'm Stacy Knoll. I'm one of the commissioners.
And I'm Tom Applegate, another one of the commissioners.
So Sarah, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Sarah Butler, Operations and Policy Advisor for the Civil Service Commissions Department.
Is there anyone else who would like to introduce themselves?
Shirley, HR Director for the Seattle Fire Department.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. I would point out that I guess a couple limitations. I'd like to limit public comment to 2 minutes. I'd like to ask you if you would introduce yourself. You don't have to, but it's often helpful. If anyone wants to later on listen to the recording of our meeting, they would know who is speaking. So you perhaps could do that. And then public comment is limited to items on the agenda, and actually the only potential item on the agenda for which we might take action is a proposed advisory opinion. There's some updates on some other things, but we won't be holding hearings or taking any action on those items on the update section. So is there anyone who would like to present public comment? So what happened to the people that were here and then left?
Oh, they came to say hello to me.
Oh, okay.
I think they're on the development committee.
All right.
I knew that before.
So I guess there doesn't need to be any public comment. All right. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I've looked at the minutes of the January 25th meeting. They seem to be accurate to me. And again, thank you, Ms. Jacobs, for your work on that. So I would move that we adopt the January 25th, 2024 minutes.
This is Commissioner Knoll. I second that.
And any discussion on that? So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Great. The next item on the agenda is the minutes of the February 13th working retreat that we had. And again, I looked at those and they seem accurate. And again, thank you, Ms. Jacobs. So I would move that we adopt the minutes of the February 13th, 2024 retreat.
I second that.
Thank you, Ms. Knoll. Any discussion on that? So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Great. Next item on the agenda is honoring the service of Commissioner Joel Nark, who 20 years on this commission. So we're just so grateful. We have something for you.
Well, I just want to say, you know, I worked with Commissioner Nark for 3 years, and your leadership during this time, I am so grateful for it. Joel, would you mind to come sit here so folks can see you online? Will you sit down, please?
Oh, sure.
You welcomed me, and I really appreciate it. You were part of the hiring team that hired me. You taught me so much about public safety, civil service. You shared your experience, your knowledge, the history of the commission. I think we share a lot of the same values about why this work is important. And so I just wanted to bring you in here today. We're so happy that you could be here with us, and thank you in person. We miss you. We are very happy to have Commissioner Applegate as our new elected. And, he is great. He's definitely, getting his feet under him. And, we will miss your experience, your perspective, and, you're speaking your mind.
Thank you.
I'd like to read into the record a resolution. A resolution of the Civil Service Commission honoring Commissioner Joel and Nark's 20 years of dedicated service. Whereas Commissioner Joel Nark has been an exemplary public servant, contributing significantly to the welfare and benefit of our community. Whereas Commissioner Joel Nark served on the Public Safety Civil Service Commission March 2003 until December 2023. Whereas Commissioner Joel Nark has diligently carried out the duties of the employee elected commissioner, having been elected by his peers to serve a 3-year term beginning March 2003, and subsequently re-elected to serve 6 3-year terms until December 2023, and having been nominated by his fellow commissioners to serve multiple terms as chairperson. Whereas Commissioner Joel Nark dedicated his 20 years to fair governance, thoughtful decision-making, and dedicated service. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Public Safety Civil Service Commission Chairperson Richard Green, Commissioners Stacy Canola and Tom Applegate, Executive Director Andrea Shealy, Commission staff, council, Public Safety Civil Service personnel, and the employees of the City of Seattle hereby express gratitude to Commissioner Joel Nark for his years of steady service and wish him a very happy retirement. Adopted by the Public Safety Civil Service Commission and signed in open session this 21st day of March at Seattle, Washington. So Joel, thank you very much.
Thank you. I would send one personal copy of this resolution. Your name plaque. And we have this great book. I don't know if you've seen this before, Elsa. Yeah, it's a history of the Seattle archives. I mean, I don't have to watch this on channel. We also have a plaque where no commemoration can be complete without a plaque. I would like to say that 20 years, it's the people I've worked with. I've worked with many commissioners. I've learned from every one of them. The commission is, public safety civil is always moving, from points where people are coming out of the war. How do we get them testing when they're in a war zone so that they can keep up? I mean, we've gone through all these things, and it's always changing. I know it's changing now, and this staff has always been the most diligent and researching and getting us the information we need. And I really enjoy Teresa as a cog that keeps this whole thing running, and I really appreciate that. And you all and your forebears have just been great. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I say something briefly before we move on?
Sure.
Okay, so I came in 2019, and you and Teresa Jacobs were the people who provided the institutional history, but also the confidence that we could kind of survive that massive transition when a bunch of people left and new people came in. And I learned so much from you at the start, but I never stopped learning. You have a very strong and unique gift of, you're very decisive at times, but you're deliberative when you need to be. You're able to teach people a lot without being at all condescending. You just kind of invite people into your knowledge and make people feel comfortable and welcome. And I learned so much from you every meeting. And I'm so thankful for the temperament that you provided. I know a lot of times you and we disagreed vehemently, subtly, in lots of ways, but there was such deep mutual respect. And I always knew that you never took it personally. We always moved on. I just really, really appreciate the professionalism that you brought to every single thing that you did, and how much thought and work you put in, not just your institutional history, but your willingness to be analytical, to be critical, to accept new information, accept direction, but also put your foot down when you felt strongly. And I just am so thankful that I got to see you in action. I think my experience would have been very different. And I think that the commission's experience would have been different if you hadn't been there. And the people of Seattle were served by your work. Most of them don't know that. They will never know that. But we know that. And we're so thankful for the time that you put in. I wish I was there in person to really shake your hand. I wanted to see you again. I have a sick kid at home, but I really wanted to shake your hand and thank you in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kroll. I feel the same. I appreciate it. You were a breath of fresh air, and I said that when you first came, and you also had a different perspective. I think between the two of us and the other commissioners that were here, that it worked out in the best, and I appreciate your words.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Joel, there's some not-to software in this box for that black.
Thank you all. Thank you. Got places to go, people to see.
Good to meet you.
Yeah. Good luck.
All right. So I think the next item on the agenda is the promotional exam protest review.
Yes, and I think, so I'll set it up a little bit, and then I think we'll proceed to executive session, to
Yes.
give and receive legal advice on this matter. We discussed this item at our last meeting in February. The commission asked me to bring together the concepts and ideas that were discussed. And so that's what this document in the materials is, this proposed advisory opinion 2024-01. I did send this draft out to the 4 unions that represent members of the public safety civil service system, so SPOG, SPMA, and Local 27 and the Fire Chiefs Union. I did not get any feedback or comment from any of those folks. I also sent these to the fire and police departments, and no comment from those folks either. But you know, so it is unchanged from that time. And I understand that the commission would like to, as I said, go into executive session to discuss. And so I think we will do that now.
So just backing up, so there were no on this exam, there weren't any protests on this police sergeant.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Commissioner Green. Right. So part of item 6 is also promotional exam protest review for the police sergeant written exam. That was on there in case there were any requests for review filed, and none were. I understand there were
9 protests.
9 protests.
One was granted, and there were no appeals to the positions of protests.
Thank you, Rachel. That's Rachel Chavez, the police exams administrator.
Great. So the commission will now go into executive session to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency a litigation or potential litigation related to proposed action or current practice pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1 sub I. It is expected the commission will be in executive session
I would say
until about,
I think maybe a little bit longer. 20.
so maybe 10:35. Is that all right?
Yeah,
Okay,
10:35.
10:35. Okay. And we will return that.
The commission is extending its executive session for another 15 minutes. The commission is extending its executive session for 10 additional minutes. Thank you.
All right. We're back in session now. It's 11:03. We complete our executive session. There were other items, there were action items that were regarding the proposed advisory opinion. We are not going to take a vote on that today. We're going to have further discussion about that. So the next item on the agenda is number 7, the updates. And the first one is the Executive Director Budget and Departmental updates.
Oh, okay, we're there. All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Green. We have the budget report in your packet. It is page 11. It shows, of course, the adopted budget. Does not reflect any carry forwards yet. We were tentatively approved for one of the carry forwards that is related to costs for legal advice. We were not approved for the other operational carry forward that I requested from our underspend for our departmental budget last year. So this number, the revised budget will be adjusted up, but not as much as I had hoped. As you know, Seattle's facing a budget deficit of $230 million in 2025 and is also having to make some adjustments to its 2024 budget. All departments have been asked to scrutinize their departmental budgets and consider where reductions in spending can be made, as has the Civil Service Commission's department. It is too early to know where that will go. But I'll keep you informed over the coming months of what the budget picture looks like for our department. As you know, improving public safety is a paramount priority for the mayor, the city council, and the Public Safety Civil Service Commission. I would like to tell you a little bit about, I'd like to tell you a little bit about a focus that our department has had, and that is entry-level police officer hiring. I'm actually going to join this session to do a quick, I'll keep it quick, I promise, a PowerPoint presentation about PSCSC and our testing staff's efforts over the past period. This will take me a second to join the meeting. Teresa, can I share my screen? Can I share my screen on this? Yes, she should. I'm trying. You're the host, you can share. Okay. No, I can share now. Okay. Right. I'm going to keep this in display mode. All right, so I'm going to talk just a little bit about entry police exams and where we are now. The Seattle Police Department's sworn staffing levels currently are at their lowest, with over 700 officers departing SPD since 2019. Though overall staffing is higher than 913 deployable officers, our deployable officers are at 913. This is a visualization of hiring goals. The stated hiring goals are 125 officers per year. So that means that we need a register. This is the eligible hires of 1,200 officers to achieve 120 hires. Historically, and we have data going on this 10 years, one out of every 10 folks who make it onto the register is hired as a Seattle police officer. Projecting that out from applications, in order to achieve 120 hires, we need 4,800 applicants. And this purple circle really would be much, much larger than is represented in this image, but we need to reach many, many, many more people that then apply. And so the Seattle Police Department is deploying its best recruiting efforts. This is a visualization of the process. I see Cece leaning in. Maybe I can make this a little bit bigger.
Oh, thanks. That looks good.
Okay. So these are the phases to hire a Seattle police officer. They have to be, the green ones are the ones that we are responsible for. Seattle Police Department is responsible for recruiting and outreach. Once folks apply, they are sort of in our purview, in our phase. SHR actually does the min-quals audit, and we receive applications through NeoGov, as many governmental entities do. Exam administration, we have halved the time in the past year and a half that it takes for a candidate who applies at the beginning of an exam cycle to get through the exam cycle. And they are not actively doing something for 0 to 2 months. And in fact, what we know to be true is that most folks apply at the end of an exam cycle. So for them, the process is much shorter than 2 months. It takes 1 to 2 days for our team to calculate preference points and calculate final scores to create a register, which we then pass on to the Seattle Police Department. You then see the following steps. Seattle Police Department is responsible for additional pre-employment screening, such as polygraph, PAT, oral board, and backgrounding is usually the longest process, and that is conducted by SPD detectives. That they have reduced the time on that, and now that takes about 6 to 8 weeks. Folks, candidates enter the Before the Badge program after they receive a provisional offer of employment. They complete that, and that's typically a 5-week program. And then they enter, if there's availability at the police academy, they enter the academy and complete that process. This is just to give you an overview of how long it is currently taking. Our elected officials have, and we agree that shortening that process would be extremely good for the Seattle Police Department, considering staffing issues. This segment gives a current snapshot of our demographic data. And this is actually a place where Seattle Police Department, and we have a lot of pride, is that we have a very high percentage of our applicants self-identifying as BIPOC, and a lower amount of female than male applicants, but I think consistent over time. I think 14% of our applicants have been women in past few years. So we're not seeing a huge decrease on that front either, which I think many agencies are. In 2023, our exam pass rate was 73%, which is actually a little bit higher than in previous years. As you see, the average for the past 10 years is 68%. And a little bit of good news as well is that applications have been ticking up, especially in 2024, ticking up slightly to a little bit more than 9 per day. And the applicant to eligible rate, that is from the folks who apply to folks who make it on the eligible register. That includes not just people who do not pass the exam, but people who do not complete the exam process, where we are hoping to make additional efforts to help carry those people through to the final phases. This is just another illustration of where we fall in the testing or the Seattle Police hiring process. This team has worked very, very hard over the past several years to improve the process for which we are responsible, that is part of the hiring Seattle police officer effort. We've been doing this work for a very long time, but we don't pretend that there's nothing that we can do better. And so we are always being critical of our own processes, especially right now, and especially over the past few years. So these are some of our recent process improvements. Folks can test from their homes, from a testing center, from any location or almost any location around the world, as long as they have an internet connection and a private place to take the exam. Prior to the pandemic, Seattle Police Department tested 4 times per year. So you had to show up in Seattle at Kane Hall at a certain time and date, having filed the correct application and be eligible to take the test. Now candidates can test almost any day of the year. We've spent a lot of time in the past 6 months to a year improving the communications, both on the application, on our bulletin and our email and other written communications with candidates. As I mentioned before, we've shortened the time frame for sending those eligible candidate lists to SPD. We communicate with candidates as they are in the testing process. We've been able to increase the number of communications we have with those folks. We also have really nice communications drafted by the chief of the police department that we send to them. They receive communication through email, text message, and they can contact us anytime they like to help answer any questions or connect them with the testing company if they're having trouble scheduling or something like that. Candidates also who have applied but have not moved on to the next stage or not completed, a form or something that they need to do in order to move to the next phase, get daily email reminders from the testing company about what they have left to complete. The testing company also has a help center, and they answer the telephone and guide people to the right place when they need that. We have created new dashboards. We are very evidence and data centered. We make decisions based on evidence. So we have, thanks to a really strong staff member named Adelaide Alderks, created new data dashboards that we share with internal stakeholders. I know that Stacy has seen those. I'm not sure whether Richard and Tom have, but I'd be happy to share those with you all too. It's really up to date, and our partners use our dashboards quite a lot in their own work. Stacy, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I don't know if now is the time to ask, but for the third bullet point, I'm curious if there's room for more improvement there. And I kind of got lost in that city council meeting. Someone implied that other jurisdictions can do this weekly or something like that. And I'm wondering if that's true and why that is.
So your first question is, can that be more speedy? And the answer is yes. We could do that more quickly, and we have let our electeds know that is a possibility. I'm also going to address that just a little bit later on, and I think that just the last slide. We could produce names, we think, to SPD every 2 weeks with additional staffing resources. Haven't received a clear answer back on whether that's going to be happening, but that is what it would take, and we've been in conversation with them about that. Your other question is, other jurisdictions do this every week or every 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think I heard that, but I might not have heard correctly.
There's a lot of information going around, and we are working hard to verify what other jurisdictions do. Washington is, so just a little bit of context, Washington is a state with lots of jurisdictions in it. Seattle is clearly the largest of those jurisdictions, and we receive the most applicants of any jurisdiction, I believe. That is true. And so we have historically done things in batches. It is, we believe, the most efficient way to process people. We have been asked to reconsider that, and that's part of what I'm just referring to, Stacy, with the addition of additional staff people. So it would probably make our system less efficient, but if we were to gain some efficiency on to address a different bottleneck, we're definitely willing to try that, put our nose to the grindstone and see what impact that has. Other jurisdictions, the ones that I've talked to, say that they pull them on a cadence that is responsive to what their police department needs, which what I've seen mostly is every month. But I can't speak to every single jurisdiction. We are doing that research. Rachel, do you have any perspective on that? Sure.
Rachel Shoddy, Police Exams Administrator, Department of Human Resources. So Seattle is unique in the state of Washington in that our hiring goals are 120 to 125 a year. Most of the smaller departments, their hiring goals are somewhere between 8, 10, 15 individuals. So the methods employed by those smaller agencies do differ from the volume that we have and the things that we need to do in our protocols. And as Andrea said, batching has always been a situation that has helped the efficiency of the process, such that We don't have our background unit going. We work collaboratively with the background unit for many, many years. We don't have them doing step 1 and 2 of the pre-employment screening process every other day. You have that done on a monthly basis or 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks, they have a scheduled time to put all the candidates through the first pre-employment step, which is the PAT, the physical agility test, and followed by an oral board. So they'll do that over 1 weekend, and that's the Saturday after they get the register. But the batching is the most efficient method we found. This isn't the first time that it's been proposed that frequency and giving lists to SPD quicker is going to result in more hires. In the mid-2000s, we had a situation where everybody believed that, and the fact we were losing candidates, everyone thought, to other agencies because they were able to hire quicker. The reality is we went to monthly testing just to try it out for 2 years, and the reality was we spent 3 times as much in terms of we tested 12 times instead of 4 times. So we spent all of those resources in testing, and the registers were produced every 4 weeks, and we hired fewer people than when we tested quarterly. So it does not follow that frequency of registers results in additional candidates. Does that make sense?
When was that happening?
That was 2007 and 2008. Yeah. So we actually did the test on a monthly basis at in person. It wasn't available. This was, long time ago. We did all of our exams in person. We moved away from the quarterly testing at University of Washington, and we went to the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Academy. And once a month, we would do a test. And candidates would take the civil service test on Saturday. We would then let them take the PAT that afternoon, and the next day they were scheduled for oral boards, and on Monday they were scheduled for background meetings with a background investigator. So we've done that. The thing to keep in mind with our process is that we have to work collaboratively, and one thing has to seamlessly flow into the next thing stepwise. And the end all after testing and the pre-employment screening is getting folks into the academy, and the department has X number of seats every month, and at the point in time that backgrounds are completed, then they fold those candidates into classes at the academy. So the candidates are either waiting at one point or another, and our goal has always been to work collaboratively with SPD to make it as seamless as possible and as methodical. And we want to make sure if you deal with candidates on an individual basis, there's more of a chance that they're going to fall through the cracks. It's like, oh, did I ensure that person did the PAT and the oral board, as opposed to this entire group got those things done, and we're now moving them on to the next step. So it's been more methodical, and for a volume-based scenario like SPD has and is not experienced by Bellevue, who hires 10 people a year, or SQUIM or Puyallup, we deal in a larger group, and we have to scale it. Exactly, that's a good word. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think what you're describing is such an important part of this story, and telling it in detail could really help other stakeholders understand that while there's clearly like this tendency to say, let's push these buttons, pull these levers, and we're going to have a better outcome. It's not as simple as that, but that story definitely needs to be told. I'm not sure people are going to find it very compelling that we tried to speed things up 15 years ago and didn't get good results, just because I imagine there are a lot of variables, and there will still be an appetite to try to speed things up in this day and age and see what happens. And even if that nets a couple more warm bodies, people might think that spend is worth it. So I'm not sure other people would find that piece as compelling, but your point about this is all interconnected, and even if we speed this portion up, if we still end up with a backlog because of downstream parts of the process, we're in trouble. I think we really do need to tell that story. I will say though, just kind of putting myself in the shoes of other stakeholders who aren't as familiar with this and don't understand this, and frankly will never understand this as well as you do or any of you in that room. There is something very just simple and compelling about this idea that the faster we get people through, the more people we can hire. Because if we don't, someone else will. If you you need a job, you're looking at multiple places, you may take the first offer you get. That's a very simple explanation and story. And it's going to be hard, if not impossible, for us to contradict that, I think. I don't know if
I think the more important part of the story, actually, at least from my perspective, is something that Executive Director Seeley spoke to, and that is we need the volume of applications. So we didn't have any advertising for 2 full years. They were crafting what they wanted to do in terms of advertising for the city. So we had 0. The applications dropped dramatically over this 2-year period. So, and consistently, for quite some time now, we had 6 applications per day that we were receiving. They just started advertising in February, and we haven't done an analysis of what, the bump in applications, what is it's a result of, but we're up to 9, just over 9 a day. We need to be at 14 a day every day of the year in order to hire 120 people. So that's where I believe the focus really needs to be, is that recruiting piece and increasing the volume at the front end of the process, such that we do have, at the end of the day, 120 candidates who we can hire and put into the academy.
I hear you, and I've heard that sentiment expressed a couple times. I think we have to be a little careful when we talk about this, because SPD is certainly seeming very, very committed to that advertising now. They seem like they're putting their money where their mouth is. It seems like that piece is happening, that they're, at least it appears so to a layperson like myself. And if that piece is happening, I think it's almost beside the point that we need 14 a day to get to the goal. What we're being asked to do is not necessarily be the thing that gets us to the goal. It's to just remove barriers to make everything else work faster. And even, I just hear this underlying sentiment of, we don't have the levers that can get us to the goal. I think that's really beside the point, and I think people get frustrated when they think they're hearing us say that. I think they just want us to remove barriers that may possibly net a few more people. No one's looking at us to get us to the goal. We kind of have to tighten up everything we can, and then if we're still not getting to the goal, there's more work to be done elsewhere. But I think it distracts from our message when people are hearing us say that, if I'm honest.
Well, thanks, Stacy. I think one of the reasons that we think that's so important is that we have, it's factual that we have been pointing this out for many years. We are the ones who have the data about applicants. And so, starting in 2022, we were communicating directly with the mayor's office and the police department about, we need to advertise, and we need to advertise big. And so, I'm not trying to cast blame, I'm just trying to paint the picture, is that, there's been a lot of attention on us in the very recent past, and we're trying to say, we're part of a team, and let us support you, and we will remove the barriers that we can. So we are definitely working hard on that front.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right, so I'll just go through the rest of this list because I think it is important. We co-created and co-present at twice monthly police applicant workshops with SPD's recruiting team. You all implemented community service preference points to help attract and to attract different types of pipelines for candidates for police officer and to fulfill our section of the 2017 Police Accountability Ordinance, and also to show the community that Seattle is trying to put its money where its mouth is when it comes to its community policing values. And finally, you know, I do get to these specific asks from our elected leaders. Those have been for directly to the PSCSC to do a candidate survey for applicants that applied but did not complete the testing process. That is underway. We'll have data to report on that in April. They also asked whether the PSCSC would agree to shorten the retest period for folks who do not pass the police officer civil service exam. That is within my discretion, and I did do that. There is now a 3-month retest period down from the standard 6 months. We've discussed a lot the possibility of doing more frequent registers, really isn't the right word, but certified lists to SPD for consideration. Hopefully that will be possible, and you know, we'll be ready to do that when it is. And investigate other testing vendors. We've talked about this, some of us have talked about this quite a bit, but we are currently conducting a deep dive on the 2 testing vendors, the one we use, which is the National Testing Network, and public safety testing, which is another alternative test. What I've heard loud and clear from our electeds though, and I expect that it aligns with the commissioners and the commission's goals, is that we do not want to lower our testing standards, that we want to maintain Seattle's current standards, which we feel, and you know, I'm hearing our electeds and our Seattle Police Department feel are appropriate for hiring for the Seattle Police Department. All right, everyone's ready. I will see what is next on the agenda. Thanks for hanging in there, everyone. This is a longer meeting than I expected, but a good one.
The next item seems to be the financial interest statements. And I know Mr. Jacobs sent those out to us. How many have we got back now?
We have a 58% return rate right now. So 3 of 6 commissioners have returned their
All right.
forms.
So if everyone could please do that as soon as you can. Looks like the next item is the case status reports.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Green. Your case status report is in your materials, starting at page 18. The commission has 3 matters currently. Swartz is a disciplinary appeal for a police officer. It was a termination case. Mr. Swartz is waiting to hear whether or not his union will grieve that separation, and so that is sort of still being held in advance for that information. Officer Willis, another disciplinary appeal. His was a 36-hour suspension. We have conducted the pre-hearing conference in that matter. I recently sent out some information to the commissioners about so they could do a conflicts check. I think I still have a couple to hear back from, or maybe there's no conflict, but please let me know if you foresee an actual or even a potential conflict with those witness lists. And Ms. Jacobs will be reaching out to the parties and actually first to you commissioners to talk about your calendars for scheduling that appeal hearing. Finally, we have the Collins complaint. Mr. Collins, former employee of the Seattle Fire Department, did file a complaint with the commission. I wrote to him, I issued an order requesting more information about the basis of his complaint. We did receive a response from him, and I will be considering that and issuing a decision on the jurisdictional issue very probably.
Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is fire and police exam unit updates.
Let's go first.
Okay.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Yoshiko Grace Matsui. I'm the fire exams administrator. Thank you for being here today. I just have a couple of updates, but then I wanted to give a more in-depth sort of progress report about what current work has to go into fire exams this year. So this is a fire exam heavy year of the, what do I have, 7 ranks that I do testing for fire. I have 4 of them this year. So that's a lot. We'll start with the rank of fire captain and battalion chief. Those are currently in process. So what happens is I have a committee of incumbent SMEs who are at that rank, who I meet with, in addition to a deputy chief who's our development chair for all of our promotional development processes. And we meet probably 2 to 3 times a month for each committee to develop the different components that go into our test, whether it's the written examination, reviewing questions. We just did a final review check of all of the written exams that we'll be administering on Saturday for both the rank of captain and battalion chief. So those get reviewed by our committee about 3 times in general. They do individual question review. We select weights from each individual source that comes from the bibliography, and then we do a final, like this is your printed copy, make sure that it actually has grammar missing, any sort of typos or errors in it. So that is a labor-intensive process that we're in the process of doing right now in preparation for administering that exam on Saturday. We've tried doing administration on the work day for us, like a Friday or a Monday, but what we've run into is that many of our candidates have childcare issues or their spouse has to work, and so we've moved those to weekends to ensure that they have coverage over other things that they need to do at home. Now, firefighters don't work for the most part 5 days a week in a row. So it's not usually an issue to have meetings during a work day, but we found that when they need coverage for home responsibilities, that having those exams on a Saturday is really the best so that they can take care of any childcare or other work-related needs there. We're also currently working on the development for Fireboat Pilot. Now, Fireboat Pilot is a bit offset from battalion and captain because I can't do 3 of them all at once. So we start the captain and battalion chief process, let's say in September of the year before, and the development and administration runs about 9 months. And so pilot, which happens in the exact same year, is offset about 3 months later so that the main administration of that test happens after the battalion chief and captain are done, because it's basically really difficult for us to do all of that at the same time. And it's helped that the registers are published at different times, right? So captain and battalion chief have to be 100% finalized and published by August 15th, and pilot and engineer, depending on the year that you're in, have to be published on December 15th. So they're offset enough that I have 3 months that I'm not running around trying to do all of those things. So currently we're working on the written exam, finalizing the bibliography for the Fireboat Pilot. A Fireboat Pilot is also unique because we use a professional sim lab where we go into a maritime training facility and they do real live simulation of driving the boat, which helps us because there are things that you want to do in a simulated controlled environment that you hope not to encounter on test day, like traffic coming straight at you or bad weather and things like that. So you're able to control that in a simulated environment to test whether or not folks have the boat handling, navigation, use of electronics, know the rules of the road in a place that's safe. You're not actually going to ram any sort of other vessel that's out there. So the fireboat involves development with actually use 3 different test vendors to help us do all those components for the written exam, a charting exercise that they do on paper, local knowledge that's part of the written exam, the practical exam that they do on board actual fireboats, and a simulation that they do in that same week. So for this pool of 4 or 5 candidates, we have 5 days of administration coming up in September. I would like to mention that in addition to that test development part, we also have to book facilities, manage the vendors. I have assessors, 9 assessors coming in for captain from other jurisdictions. I have to find a civilian to sit on a week's worth of panels to be part of that, which is a longstanding practice that we have, having civilian on one of the boards. 9 people also flying in for battalion chief. We are setting up administration for the captain's exam happens off-site at a hotel. And this year for battalion chief, we're doing physical administration of that in this building because the numbers are small enough that we can save the money and not book a hotel. So that means travel, meals, communication with other departments for those 9 assessors that are coming from somewhere else. So 9 assessors for captain, 9 assessors for battalion chief, and we use 3 outside assessors for the fireboat pilot. This being a very fun year, we also have firefighter coming up, which is one of the largest, along with police officer, one of the largest hiring processes that we have in the city. Typically, we open up applications in October, so our target date this year is, I think, October 5th. Over the last several years, we've varied between 4,500 to 3,200 applications in that period. We open it for about 10 to 12 weeks. People test online or in person, it's up to them. And then when folks pass and get and achieve a passing score on firefighter, everyone who passes, and this has been again a long-standing practice, is invited to an oral board that they participate in person. And so our team, fresh off of these 4 other exams, goes into oral board administration in January and February of 2025, where we do about 100 to 110 interviews a day. And so we have to get a block to do 1,000 interviews in 3 weeks. We have to block the hotel, and like last year, like I put out the request for proposal last year, signed a contract with the hotel this year after having to tour those sites, making sure that they would actually work for the volume of candidates that we use. So, and I would also say, in addition, in the past 3 cycles, we've also used civilian assessors, which is an added body of work that we never did before 2018. And so our office had to create an advertising, training, recruitment process for civilian assessors that we've never had to do before. So that is an additional body of work that we took on in order to have a 3rd panelist to those 110 interviews a day for 21 days in a row that we do coming up in January. So, and that is on top of some of the conversations that we've pulled in about police officers. So I support Rachel and the rest of the team when it comes to scheduling oral boards for lateral entry folks, backing up with doing workshops for that, and whatever else they tell me to show up for, basically. And so that is the bulk of the work that I am doing this year for the fire department and the city of Seattle.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Sounds like you have a full plate, so to speak. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
And I'm going to run upstairs to the rest of my development meeting.
Thank you, Yoshiko.
Yes.
Before you leave, Yoshiko, I do want to acknowledge your work in helping you and Dave both helping the SPD recruiting team learn how to source candidates from LinkedIn. That's something that I spoke with Lieutenant Hughes yesterday, and she greatly appreciates. So
Thank you. Appreciate it.
she was a professional recruiter before she joined our team, and knows all the process. She's really doing a good job training folks.
Great.
Okay, so we are going to talk about police exams now. So for our entry level police officer exam process, I checked today, we had 377 for the current exam cycle that closes for applications on Monday. What's today? Oh no, tomorrow. I'm sorry. The 22nd is tomorrow. And then closes for applications, but the candidates have until the 26th to complete their testing. And so we're hopeful with applications ticking up that there are more individuals who are following through and actually participating in the test process. We have this Saturday, we have as Yoshika mentioned, the administration of the fire captain, fire battalion chief written exam. But the following Saturday, we have interviews for lateral entry police officer. We have just 2 individuals who have completed the frontline national and PSSA test and who qualified to participate in lateral oral boards. So we'll be conducting those on March 30th. We administered an exam for police sergeant on Saturday, March 2nd, and we had 47 officers participate in that exam for police sergeant. And since that time, we administered the protest period. We did not have any appeals, as we mentioned earlier, but we are getting scheduling out for 2 police officers regarding those who participated to have the availability to come and participate in orientation sessions for the assessment exercises that they'll be taking on April 6th. So we will be administering part 2 of the sergeant's exam on April 6th, and orientation sessions that we allow or invite our officers to participate in basically gives them an overview of what the process is like, what to expect, how to prepare to do well, and a variety of information. We held 6 orientation sessions last week. We have another one this afternoon and another one tomorrow morning. So a total of 8 for those 47 officers to be able to come and get some information to help them prepare for the exam to be administered on April 6th. On April 8th is the final portion of that exam process. We have a writing exercise that's going to be administered. That is a Monday. We'll have the candidates come in and participate in a 90-minute exercise in which they produce a document that will be scored and graded as part of the exam. The week of April 29th, we have assessors coming into town for scoring of the police sergeant's exam. So that will be Monday through Thursday, I believe, with the numbers that we have. Monday's dedicated to training all of our assessors with regard to the ground rules, how it is providing the structure and format for that they need to follow in order to score the exam exercises. These are videotaped exercises, so I didn't mention that, but on April 6th, when candidates participate in the exam process, those are not in person before assessors. We actually have facilitators from the Department of Human Resources who will read the script and present the exercises. The responses will come from the candidates and be taped digitally. We got our digital cameras. Very excited. Last year, we entered the digital age. We were working with our PSCSC cameras for 20 years. And we then preserve those. We have that put into a SD card or a drive, a thumb drive, where assessors come in and they're actually scoring from the videotape. The reason we do that for our largest groups, police sergeant, police lieutenant, rather than in-person interviews, just to give you history and background on that, is in 2002, we had a very unfortunate situation where we had a cheating scandal in a police sergeant's exam. And what actually happened was we had a lieutenant who was on the development committee give the exam exercises and scoring criteria to his former patrol partner. What came out in the investigation of that incident is we came to know and understand that it took us 7 days to do the in-person exercises for the group that was that large, the 4 live assessors. The candidates, even though they had filed or signed confidentiality agreements, were speaking openly about the exercises they had participated in, such that candidates who tested later in the week knew of what those exercises were. And that had to be separated out from, what the actual incident was. I mean, that was also egregious, don't get me wrong. We were concerned about that to the point where we changed our format for our largest test groups, which are promotional test groups, police sergeant and fire lieutenant since then. So we accomplished it all in 1 day. We have our 47, in the case of this sergeant's group, go through 2 separate exercises that are run, recorded, and scored from that recording by assessors, but it takes a few days to do. So they'll be coming to town on April 29th. With regard to, I did want to speak to Commissioner Knoll's, Stacy's concerns. I really hope that, sharing, what I see as the volume that we need in applications isn't like trying to diminish our, will, our desire to be as collaborative as we possibly can be with the, police department and working with them collaboratively to systematically process candidates. I have, really enjoyed working collaboratively with the police department for, a number of years before the pandemic, and when we were giving exams in person. We used to travel, actually. I traveled with the recruiters and the backgrounders, and we did exams in, I counted 17 different states, many of them multiple times. We used to do whatever was necessary in order to meet our hiring goals. And so that's always been our quest and our desire, is to really fill the need of both, the hiring needs of both police and fire. There's a large body of work attached to all of these things, and our goal has always been to do it as in such a structured way that we are accomplishing things and moving people forward systematically. I don't think any of us are opposed to working or exploring, other things. We've been in discussions with Andrea about, what we can do and kind of what our constraints are right now with regard to our other responsibilities other than entry-level, police officer testing. We want to fill the need, but we want to do it in a responsible way and in a way that allows us to fulfill all of our responsibilities, if that makes sense. I hope I didn't convey that. I wasn't trying to be flippant about, we need 14 applications a day. It is a numbers game though, and recruiting and retention both are very important factors in this. It's not just, the testing piece of it.
I 100% hear what you're saying, and I should have been more careful with my wording. What I'm really getting at is there is so much work happening by you and by the commission, the staff, etc. Not so much the commissioners. We're listening and we're here to support you. I mean, we're working, but not on this directly like you are. That's all I mean by that. But the reason I'm making these comments is really an effort to both try to see how we can champion the work that you're doing and protect that work. Because I think there has been collaboration, there will be collaboration, but there's a little bit of a breakdown or fraying around the edges. And I think that where I'm coming from, because I'm feeling protective and I'm feeling like we need to be championing the work that we're doing, is that in a lot of cases, it's not what we're saying, it's how we're saying it. And Ms. Sade, I've heard that several times. I wasn't reacting to you saying that I've literally heard that many times. And what I was really trying to get at, and again, I should have said this more carefully, is we just want to couch that when we talk about it with stakeholders in a way that never leaves the listener thinking that we think there's futility to what we can do to tighten our end of it. Because I do get concerned that when we kind of catalog the things that are outside of our control, what that is good data. And we need to explain that so that the listeners are realistic and understand what our role is, because there's just a lot of misunderstanding. But we have to be careful with how we do it so that no one can hear that as our sense of futility or a sense of, you know what, we really just have to get recruiting up, or we have to get retention up, or we have to get to 14. That's all true and needs to be said. It's really just, I'm thinking kind of big picture about how we say it, when we say it, and that it's always underscored, which it is, and I need to acknowledge that, with also we are feeling a sense of urgency, we are committed, and if our work can even get a little bit of marginal improvement, we're willing to do it. And including when we talk about things like efficiency, batch processing is more efficient, and people need to understand that. People need to understand that maybe they want to pour trillions of dollars into a less efficient process, and maybe the numbers get worse like they did 15 years ago. That's a possibility. But we aren't necessarily the people who need to decide that. We just need to serve up the data that, like, we are willing to do this. We are willing to explore. But hey, let's be realistic about what that could wind up doing. It's more just how I'm just feeling sensitive about how we're saying it because of this perception outside of the room.
Yeah, part of the difficulty, I think, from my perspective, is when we did in-person testing, we were in control of everything. There were like physical scan sheets that got scored that day, and the register was put out the very next day. We started with virtual testing, which is awesome for individuals who live in, other states on the East Coast, Midwest, and they don't have to travel here. But when you have a testing process, and this is another part of the story that I think people don't understand, like what all goes into creating a register and eligibility list. We now have to count on our candidates filling out the correct application, entry level or lateral, taking the correct test when they get to the NTN site, entry or lateral, making sure that they actually file an application and not just go to the NTN site because they heard that's who we use, and test. At the end of each exam cycle, it is very much like detective work that has to happen. I'll compare my report for who has applied to NTN's report with regard to who is tested, and then it begins in terms of figuring out, did they file the right application. I'll have to find their score. They're an entry-level applicant, but they took the lateral entry test. So I have to go in search of. It's not as straightforward as when we were doing it. We had these paper sheets that were scored, and it was all very very efficient. So it's just it takes more time. And then after that, we have to go about the process of collecting DD-214s for people who are claiming veterans preference. We have to review the community service preference points documentation that are submitted to us to see if individuals qualify for that. We have to schedule language tests for those who say that they're proficient in another language. Schedule them for that test with our vendor, Altalang, get the results back, add the language preference points. There's a series of events that need to occur. So it's not like, oh, you get a report from NTN and you upload it. There's a series of things that need to happen, which are, by their very nature, it's just a lot more complicated than when we did our own testing.
I think what you said is extremely important. And I think when we're asked the question, what does entry-level testing entail? That story needs to be told. That's a bullet point list that needs to be known, that is part of the the work that's done, and we need the support to staff that. And that's such an integral part of being able to explain, here's why it takes the time it does, and here are the limitations on how fast it can get, and here are the staffing needs. Exactly what you just said. That's such an important part of that story.
I think that Commissioner Applegate.
Yeah, I was just curious, Ms. Sade, has anyone from any of the stakeholders that are interested in accelerating or removing barriers to the application process, has anyone approached you for your recommendations or input?
I have started, I've been invited to meetings, and we've all been collaboratively sharing our viewpoints with all of the stakeholders. But, you know, everyone kind of has their own perspective on what the issues are and how they would like this to go. Yes, I am at the table. So we're trying to have that conversation.
We meet about twice a month with a stakeholder group, Commissioner Applegate, that involves people from the mayor's office, the Seattle Police Department, us. That's the main group that's been meeting for a couple of months now, to drill down on the slate of aspects of hiring a entry-level police officer. But we've been working on this, and they are too. They have been too, for several years.
I see. Yeah, just
great. We've all got different sort of, not different ideas. We share more than we differ on in terms of strategy. Yeah.
And there are lots of things that are kind of working against us, if you will, in terms of increasing interest. It takes a lot more work. In the economy that we're in now, where people have opportunities for other jobs, there isn't the interest level that you have when there's a recession. In the past, whenever, not that I would ever wish a recession on any of us, but when the economy has taken a downturn, back in, I think I shared this with Commissioner Green last week, in 2008, we had a downturn, and when we were testing in 2009, there were so many people who were interested all of a sudden in filing applications for both police and fire. On the police side, we had literally 5-minute application periods. So we would open it up and hundreds of applications would pour in, numbers that would exceed the facilities we had in order to administer the exam, and we had to shut it down. And then calls would be made to the mayor's office and Citizen Service Bureau, complaining that we had closed the application process. So, the economy is working against us. We have civil, unrest that has occurred recently, where, people have, bad feelings about, are not considering a career in law enforcement because they feel like, maybe it isn't the right time, or, the feelings about police officers are not positive. And so I've had candidates even talk to me about, they're afraid of what their family members or friends might say if it got out that they were applying to be a police officer. So that's working against us. And then, quite frankly, it will be helpful, I think, when the collective bargaining agreement is settled, because we're 4 years out of contract. So all of those things are working against us.
perfect. Well, thank you for answering. As you were speaking earlier, I was just thinking about how valuable the insight that you have would be to all these different stakeholders, but it sounds like you do have a seat at the table and you have communicated these things. So I'm happy to hear that that's the case. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sade.
Great. The next thing on the agenda is staffing information.
Yes, thank you, Chair Green. I do have numbers reported from Seattle Fire Department. Thank you very much, Ms. Lee, for providing those. For sworn employee count for Seattle Fire Department, I have 1,021. Budgeted sworn pockets, so that's positions in the departmental budget, I have 1,108. SFD is reporting 18 year-to-date separations and 39 year-to-date appointments. The data I have from Seattle Police Department, I believe came from last week. And I have budgeted sworn pockets, 1,113. Sworn employee count, I have 968. Year-to-date appointments, police department's reporting 5, and year-to-date separations is 9. And that's all.
Thank you. That's very helpful. We've already talked about the Collins complaint.
Oh, yeah, sorry, that was outdated.
All right. Next item is I don't think we have any old or new business. I know that we're going to have future sort of discussions about this proposed advisory opinion. And we've got, now you think for our next meeting, we might have some protest reviews.
It's possible we will have, yes, I don't know which exams those will be,
Okay.
but yes. Captain of Battalion Chief, it sounds like, thank you, Shai.
All right, so we will wait on that. Any other business from either of the other commissioners? If not, I will move that we adjourn.
I second that.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. We stand adjourned at 12:04. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.